Okay, this is the second installment in Revolution Road. Second game from the same box, and it's the Battle of Bunker Hill. Continental troops besieging Boston. The Brits decide to dislodge them. Now, like the Boston to Concord game, this actually uses basically the same system as the Boston to Concord game, but the base system. But like a coin game, the actions have all changed, and some of the other aspects have too, like the movement rates and how things are affected in the areas, etc. But the core of the game is that same framework where you're going to be, let's find where the game rules actually start again, where you're going to be drawing a card for action points, doing your actions, and then, we're using the same kind of mechanism for the action creation, but also for how the reserves are generated and everything. And I think that actually explains a few things, like why the rules are the way they are, which is to say, I think initially there was an idea of putting out a standard rule set and a game-specific folders, but because it's kind of an introductory game, that probably was decided wasn't a good idea, and what you ended up with was an editing situation where the rules were kind of glued back together, but maybe not in the most comprehensible manner, at least for me, in terms of it. Now, I apologize for the glare off the map. Give me glossy maps. Apparently my lighting here, I've got no real solution to it except like drape things over my ceiling and everything. We'll try to avoid games with glossy maps as much as possible. But that's going to be tough. I mean, oh well. All right. So, ignoring that action system, which I spent some time on, but you can get the rules for that from the Boston to Concord game, because I don't really want to read a lot of rules. We have some differences with this one in terms of some of what's presented. So first of all, there's a bunch of these landing areas where the British troops can be at sea and then can be landing on the ground. The base scenario assumes and limits the Brits to landing areas 2 and 3. There are ahistorical options that allow them to land anywhere. Now, there are reasons why some of the other landing zones are not as appealing. They have these values on them. Let's take a look. So the big number in a landing zone is the number of the landing zone, and it'll have staging areas associated with it, which is where the troops actually will be landing. The small numbers, we flip to another rule to find that, 3.5. Okay. The small numbers are going to be something. The first number is the transport number. That's how many troops you can land from the water to the land on any given turn, I think. No, from any given land troops action. The number to the right is the staging action. Once there are enough pieces equal to the staging action, you're allowed to leave that space. Now, you can see the invasion from these spaces is very easy. Up here, you'd have a slow buildup of forces. I'm not sure if that's anything more than just a game balance mechanism, if you're going to be allowing the Brits to land anywhere, you really don't want them surging behind the Continentals. Not a lot of designer notes on this that I recall. I don't know. The designer notes are in the other one. Okay. What else do you have? You have some terrain values here. So the number to the left in the terrain indicates if somebody's shooting you. I'll try to get rid of the glare there, but it's going to be present no matter what. I've moved the table around. I can't do a damn thing about it, and I wish the table wasn't so far back now because I got worse light and still glare. So the number to the left is a penalty that's applied to any firing into that space. Now there are some modifiers to whether or not it's applied. So like, if you're on top of a hill, you don't get the penalty for shooting down. Well, you might. They've got special colors associated with them, but you don't get a penalty for shooting downhill into a penalty space or across hills. So from here up to here, you wouldn't get the firing penalty. The number to the right is a bonus in dice that you're going to get when you're assaulted. Now they are different colors. So this one is based on the redoubt. There may be some special rules applying to that, but I don't recall. These are based on this rail fence and stone wall, and they only apply if the attack's occurring across them. In this game, each space has a stacking limit. Did I get this wrong? See, I've been worrying about this for a while. Did I fail to notice a stacking limit in the original, in the first one I played? Yeah, I find this rulebook harder to deal with. It's got more of this fancy layout stuff going on that just confuses me. I don't think there was a stacking limit in the other one, but there's a stacking limit here of 3 pieces. It might be just 3 military units though. Yeah. Well, there's a stacking limit somewhere in here. We have a table of contents. We don't have an index. And you wouldn't think you need an index with something this small, but I have almost no capability to remember where things are in this rule book. So I'm flipping through it. It's like dealing with like some of the Ameritrash and Euro game rule books where it just doesn't sink in where the hell something is. It's got to do with the fancy graphic layout for me, I think. Well, there's a stacking limit of 3. I don't know if cannons and leaders count. I'm pretty sure leaders don't. I'm not sure about cannons. If cannons do, I've misplaced my pieces at the beginning of the game. Don't know where it is. Saw it before. Don't see it now. And we just flip through. Alrighty. Well, it's probably under the map. And I mean, now I can't stop, right? Because I'm this kind of... Okay. One thing you'll notice is the Charleston neck, because it's so tight, provides a bonus to fire going into it, which will probably be coming from a naval cannonade. I'll just forget about stacking for now. Field cannons count towards stacking limits. Well, so this is kind of interesting, actually. I don't know where the hell to put this extra piece then. This is kind of interesting because I don't remember why now. Something was interesting, but I forgot what. Yeah, I'm really not together in terms of my thinking ever anymore. Was I ever? So what do we have going on here? We have a fleet which can sail around and do some bombardment. We have guns back here which can also bombard. And the way that these things bombard is based off of looking at this chart. So Copp's Hill and Boston Harbor can hit the areas highlighted here, I guess. From the Charles River, you can hit, and this would just be boats hitting these, the areas noted here. And from the Mystic River, you can hit the areas noted here. The mill pond doesn't really exist and doesn't really matter. It's just a graphic thing that they go into. We're tracking ammo and morale in this game. They all start at 24. Well, rebel ammo. One of the big factors in the situation that forced the Continental troops to leave was they were running out of ammo. There's special rules. The Brits have the wrong ammo for some of their guns, and they're going to be degraded based on that. And of course, this is listed in the description of the playing pieces and not really anywhere else. And there's a reason that I have trouble coping with a game like this, with the rules the way they're written. The British player rolls a die and adds the current total. Okay, so how do they not fire? They cannot fire their field artillery at all until that ammo arrives. The earliest it can arrive is, I guess, turn 4, and that's going to be kind of random when it arrives. Okay, let's look at the different activities or actions that you can spend your action points on. Again, remember, the first video I did on this series covers how you get your action points and how you manipulate them. So, volley fire. This allows you to activate the units in a region, and you can fire up to 2 regions away. You're going to get a fired marker at the end of this. You can't fire volley fire with a fired marker. You count up your total combat strength, and you apply volley fire modifiers, which are the terrain modifiers up there. You roll the number of dice. You hit on 5s and 6s. If it's 1 region away, and on 6s if it's 2 regions away. You don't have to fire everything in a region. You can throw field cannon in on this. They have decreased firing capabilities if you're doing volley fire with them than they do if you're using cannonade, but you save perhaps an action. Okay. Assault allows you to pick a region, and you will assault an adjacent region. You could not have moved or fired to do this. You must have as many healthy units in the assault. Okay, so there's a couple of places in this where the grammar is just horrible. There must be as many healthy units in the assault than healthy units defending. I don't think there's one case where it could be misconstrued. This isn't it, but there's no place where any reasonable person would do so. It's just something to kind of give you a heads up that, like, I didn't see this in the other rule book. We also had, like, the misuse of the word sight, the homonym, I think. Okay. Do not count broken units or leaders. The assaulting units move into the target region. The defending units get a free round of combat. And like in the other rule set, combat is handled entirely in its own section. And then, if the attacker ever has less healthy units than the defender, the assault will end, and the attacker must retreat. After the defender gets his free round of combat, then the attacker applies his casualties, and then both sides will simultaneously fire at each other until one side or the other withdraws. The winner's surviving units remain in the region. You roll a number of dice equal to your combat strength. Sounds like the same as battle, but there may be all kinds of weird shit that's not covered in the action. The defender rolls dice equal to his combat strength plus the assault modifier, the terrain bonus in the space. The defenders will all get fired markers, but they don't need to. They don't need to not have one in order to fire back, and the attackers get moved and fire markers. Now, there was something interesting here, which is your morale is going to go down. The Patriot ammo is going to be reduced when they're assaulted or when they volley fire. And being assaulted really drains your ammo. We'll see the ammo rolls in a bit. Cannonade, you activate all your field cannons on the board, and they can shoot anything that's got line of sight. Now, line of sight from this game, it's an area-based game. It's really left unspecified in a lot of ways. I mean, the rules are fairly clear on it. You look at approximately the center of the area and draw to the center of the other area and see if there's anything that intervenes. Almost like a minis game, but it's a very, very strange concept to like leave things that much up to judgment calls. We don't know. And you got to be careful. Like, I think this is a road. Let's see if there's a terrain effects chart on this one. There is no terrain effects chart on this, but I think these are roads and these are the area boundaries. So, you know, when you look at an area like this, you're not like, oh, this is the center. Nah, it's somewhere around there, and that's going to help distract your ability to tell what the center actually is. I don't think roads have any effect in this. They're just there to confuse the line of sight rolls. Even further. Okay, so how does the cannonade work? Field cannon in different regions can target different units. However, all the cannon in the same space have to target the same enemy space. They roll a number of dice equal to their combat strength. There's no terrain modifier effect, and they hit on 5s and 6s at 2 regions away or closer. If it's beyond 2 regions, they hit on 6s. And I believe their fire is unlimited. So, as you can see, throwing them into a volley fire reduces their range. However, actions are an important thing, and you have to keep in mind, well, do I want to fire all my cannon for one action, or do I want to fire each of my areas individually and throw the cannon in? All kind of stuff like that. The Brits only can do a bombard action. This allows them to activate their fleet and Cops Hill battery for firing. You can use these together, or you can do them separately. There's the target areas which can be discovered, and the British fleet, In both Naval Fleet and Cops Hill Battery can bombard their target region if there's 2 healthy Patriot counters in it, or they can use Hot Shot if they can hit Charleston to try to set it on fire. One may target units, and the other attempt to hit the town, blah, blah, blah. When aiming at units, you roll 2 dice and you hit on 6s, unless for some reason you're shooting at things that are in a staging area. Anything on the staging area, because it's close to the sea, it's easier to target, boom. You can hit it on a 5 or 6. Terrain modifiers have no effect. These will only be applied against unbroken and healthy, undamaged units, including field cannon. Any damaged, wounded units, whatever, aren't going to take hits. Trying to see if that's the same with cannonade. Yep, it's the same with cannonade. It is not the same with volley fire, though, if I recall correctly. Yeah, volley fire you can wipe out a unit with. Even if it's just cannons doing the volley fire. All right, For burning the town, you roll a die, and you set the town. You roll just one die, and on a 4 through 6, you set the town on fire. The location that you aimed at. We got little markers that have fires on them, and these will spread. And the Brits get victory points if they can get more than 5 Charleston areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they could get, I guess, up to 4 victory points off of burning all of Charleston. Land move, you pick a region that has counters. Units that have not moved are allowed to move up to 3 regions, leaders up to 4. The counters have to stop if they move adjacent to enemy units. No unit can enter Charleston if areas that are on fire. Terrain and roads have no effect on movement. The British must stop when entering a Charleston region because they're afraid of the snipers there. Patriots can move through though. Here's the stacking. 3 military units, including cannon, in that land area. You may not move through other units. Oh, I hate these rules. I hate you can't move through things. At any time during movement if it would cause an overstacking. The exception to that is retreating. In retreating, you can run through the units. You don't disrupt them or anything. Naval move, that's an action. You can move the fleet counter from one fleet box to an adjacent fleet box. Since I'm in Boston Harbor to begin with, I can go in either direction. And really, you look at your bombardment charts and decide what you want to do. Rally, this is like in the other one. A leader can flip 1 broken unit in the region. You rally in an entire region. You can pick as many leaders in that region as you like. Each leader gets rallied. You can't fix field cannon or wounded leaders. And reorganize the line. This allows you to pick 2 adjacent regions and swap units in it without regard to stacking limitations during the movement. So like if you have two fully stacked spaces, you can still move a unit. You can still move the units around back and forth between them without having to do anything complicated. That's a cute little option because I could see this game being really problematic if you couldn't do that kind of shift because you'd have to create holes in your line temporarily. Sniping. This is similar to the last sniping. You target a region in or adjacent to Charleston with unbroken or healthy British pieces. It has to be adjacent to a town region that's not on fire. You don't need Patriot forces. And you roll a die. On a 5 or a 6, you cause a hit to an unbroken or healthy piece. You can't shoot. You can't finish pieces off this way. Land troops. The Brits are able to move counters from the staging area up to the numbers required, and they get a move marker for that. You got the planning and pass actions. Those allow you to play around with these things. Pass not so much, but all right. Let's take a break. Retreats in this scenario only happen with an assault action. They can either be as a result of the assault mandatory, or they can be a willingness to withdraw. Now, when you retreat before combat, Minutemen can do it if they want. And each one can grab a militia and carry it. But the militia can't do it themselves unless with a Minuteman or a leader without being paired. When the attacker retreats, it's back to the region where the assault began from. If the defender retreats, it must be rear away from the direction where the assault took place. Retreating units can retreat more than one region if they can't stack in the region they're retreating through. We have different terrain elevations. The dark green are terrain elevation 2. And so is Moulton's Hill. slopes are considered elevation 1, and honestly, Moulton's Hill is about elevation 1, but it's treated as an elevation 2 for the rules. And then elevation 0 is the rest of the board. Obviously, things that are higher than you can't look through, and you can't see through enemy troops. However, if you have a height advantage, you can see over enemy troops and over lesser obstacles as well, in order to shoot behind. There is a problem, though. There's the shadowing behind you. It's all handled in the line of sight. It all makes sense, but it's almost a common sense sort of line of sight situation where I can see people coming to disagreements, especially when they're trying to determine what the center of an area is and whether a line crosses over something. We've had trouble enough with that with hex games where it's an irregular shape. It's going to be really painful. No matter what, you can't fire through the town. All right, Patriot ammunition. Every time the Patriots do a volley fire, they lose a point of their ammo. Every time they're assaulted, they will lose probably 2 points of ammo. They lose 1 for their free defensive fire, and then 1 if they're involved. So you lose 1 if you use free defensive fire, and you lose 1 for being involved in the assault at all. So even if you're the attacking player, you'd lose 1. But the defending player gets to lose an additional 1 if he wants to take that extra fire. Now, once the points move down to 12, the Patriot can only roll 3 dice in combat, i.e. that any of their units kind of become 1s or less, essentially. And they can no longer use the snipe action. And now here we have these funny things with this the rulebook layout. Now I expect to see if there's anything else that's here. No, it's like in the other one, but even more confusing because this just looks like text rather than. But there's this little colored block that extends this at the bottom of the page. Some really weird layout choices. When the ammo marker reaches 0, the Patriot gets the following additional penalties: no more than 2 dice in combat. They can't use an assault. They can only volley fire into adjacent regions. That's not so bad. Except it's only 2 dice. And the British may assault even if there are more Patriot units in the region. The morale chart, every time a unit's broken, a point of morale is lost. When it recovers or rallies, a point is regained. When a leader's wounded, you lose a point. If a unit is destroyed, you lose a point in addition to the point you lost for being routed or broken. And if a leader is killed, you lose an additional 2 points. If morale reaches 12, Patriot militia units will begin to panic, and there's panic rules very shortly. And then when the morale markers reach 0 for either side, the army is demoralized. At the beginning of the turn when Patriot morale drops below 12, at or below 12, the British player picks a region with militia adjacent to at least 1 British unit, and each unbroken militia in the area, in the region, must make a courage check. You add the combat strength to the die roll. If you get 4 or less, the unit panics. And it flips to its broken side and gets a panic marker. Any broken units, Minutemen or... Okay, so here's the one place where the grammatical... It's actually not grammatically incorrect, but it's disturbing. Any broken units, comma, Minutemen or militia. Now, you got to be careful. That can only be taken one way, but... It almost looks like a sequence, right? In the region are automatic. It's not. It's a clarification to units. If you got rid of the word units to any broken Minutemen or militia, comma, and get rid of the comma. Any broken Minutemen or militia in the region are automatically given a panic marker. The way that says, it seems to be that it's not just the units that are rolled for panic, but any already broken units also get them. Not sure that's what's intended. Each panicked unit is moved 3 regions towards the muster box, but it only affects the unbroken, so it makes sense. And they may move further due to stacking limitations. The muster box I didn't really explain. It's over on the other side of the neck. It's where Patriot reinforcements are going to come in, and they'll have to make their way across the gauntlet. All right. Panicked units cannot be activated if they're the target of ranged fire and they survive. They run 3 more spaces. If any panicked unit is assaulted, they're just destroyed right there. They just fall apart. There was a way to rally them. I know I saw it. I'm not seeing it now. Maybe it's not here. Maybe it's somewhere else in the rules. But yeah, there was one. At the end of the turn, if the morale marker has not reached 0, yes, this is it right here. But I see this 0, and I'm like, I'm thinking about this new rule here. If it hasn't reached 0, a healthy leader may remove 1 panic marker in the region that they're in. Okay, Patriot demoralization. Minutemen are unaffected by demoralization. But when the morale marker reaches 0, the Patriot takes some effects. Militia run 3 regions towards the muster box. This is done at the moment when the 0 is hit. You will not recover from 0. Patriot may not recover from demoralization. Militia activated for movement, so we don't have to worry about double dipping that. Activated for movement may only move towards the muster box. Patriot cannot rally. Even Minutemen, I assume, because this is a restriction on the player. The Patriot loses all reserve action markers and may not plan. He gets 1 less action point from the cards. Militia only hit on a 6. For British demoralization, they can no longer rally. They subtract 1 die from their volley fire and assault. Did we not have that somewhere else? Looks like that does not affect. Neat. British receive 1 less action point from their cards. They lose their reserve and may not plan, and they cannot recover from demoralization either. If both sides demoralize, the game ends, and I guess you score it at that point. Victory points are just going to be added up. Whoever has the most wins. It doesn't matter whether somebody's demoralized. Bunch of optional rules. The redoubt, they gave some more strength to it. Allow the Patriot to ignore the first hit. And again, like in the other game, these can be used for balancing. You could also do some bidding for balancing. Some additional options. You can spend an extra ammo to increase a die on volley fire. You could increase your to-hit rolls by using more ammo. You can increase the number of the choices of landing zones for the reinforcement Brits. All right, let's look at the victory conditions, see what they're going to be like, because, and again, we have the assault in this case rolls here. Okay. The British player rolls a die for every Charleston region that's not on fire at the end of the game. He does this at the end of each turn, too. And on a 6, it'll spread to another region. Yeah, I forgot to look at the end turn things, but that's the big thing that I remember. This can change the victory point total. Okay, here's one. Wounded counters. Broken units, wounded leaders. At the end of the game, you roll a die. And basically on a 5 or a 6, they count as destroyed, and they count for victory points, which means, it probably doesn't affect things too much. It probably comes out to an increase, at least when I'm looking. This was present in the Boston to Concord, and I forgot to use it. It probably doesn't have too much of an effect not to do it. It gives you a randomizer at the end of the game. So if it's a close game, you might get lucky on the post game and win the game that way. Each hill region with an unbroken unit gives you a victory point. These are the dark green, and they count Moulton's Hill in this. Again, it's all the level 2 areas. Points for destroying stuff and for burning over 5 regions. Points for destroying stuff. The British Marines, they're like the regulars, except they have strength 3. And whoever has the most points wins. If that's a tie, it's whoever has the most hilltops. If that's a tie, the Patriot wins. And that's about it. I'm not going to start it today. Not sure if I'm going out gaming tomorrow. We'll start it then. And may not start it Sunday. Because that's shopping day. So, well, you don't know, but we'll see what we can get on this. All right, send it up.